Thank you, Laura. Yeah, so we don't need. Okay, all set, Bob? All right, I'd like to call the April 3rd, 2023 meeting of the Hampden Board of Selectmen to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The board is meeting live in the auditorium, plus on Zoom. We are recording the meeting. Is there anybody else recording the meeting? Kristen, thank you. Times is recording. First thing on the agenda, minutes of February 21st. We met with the highway superintendent to review his budget and ongoing issues. We met with a representative from Ty and Bond to talk about stormwater. And we met with the chief of the fire department, Chief Poulin, to talk about the fire department budget. And then we had a fairly long discussion on the ambulance contract. This was not the meeting where we voted the contract.
Geez, we did a lot there.
Earned your pay that night.
Yeah. Planning board. The annual town meeting. Defibrillator maintenance.
That was the first discussion of the program.
Move to approve March 21st.
Second.
All those in favor, February 21st.
February 21st.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Just testing me, correct? Thank you.
You see, I was paying attention. I seconded it.
Well, maybe you'll look. Well, we will be seeing the March 21st minutes, so.
So I'll save that. I don't have
Right,
to
save
do
it for then, please. We have a candidate for the fire department. Chief.
Thank you for seeing us this evening. I bring forward John Fitzgerald, who lives in town over 25 years. He applied to the fire department to be a probationary firefighter to help out in some aspect. His son Ryan had joined the fire department less than a year ago for purely medical side of it, but we've slowly winning him over to the fire department side, firefighting. So his father, I think, saw a huge improvement in his son and his abilities. And I think that was part of the reason he wants to join, but you can ask him that. But tonight I'm looking for the Board of Selectmen to approve him as a probationary firefighter.
Mm-hmm. So John, want to share a little bit about yourself?
I moved into town 1997. I've had an interest in being on the fire department for a while now, but my job restrictions kept me from doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Now with a job change and hour change, I've got a lot more time, free time to help out.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, plan on doing whatever I'm asked to do, whatever we can do to help out. And
So Chief, is there still quite a bit of training to do? There's nothing that's been checked off at this point, or we're really at the beginning of the probationary period?
So probationary period will last 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
We will provide him training in-house, and he'll have to meet his steps and criteria to become a full-time firefighter. Or he may say that I want to be an engineer, just a driver of the apparatus. I think I'm leaving it up to John to try it out and tell me where he feels, or see what his strengths are and recommend a spot for him.
So the driver thing, much like you did with Chuck when he came before us a couple months ago?
Yeah, Chuck is, he is our photographer with a fill-in engineer. But we do have Mike Patrick is in the role of engineer, just driver now for us, which is great. If even in that role, it gives us the firefighter that normally would be driving is now focused on firefighting, working off the engine.
Excellent. The board has a couple pages of detailed questions for you. I hope you don't mind.
Couple pages.
We'll show you some pictures, see if you recognize.
Yeah,
John, what do you do for Otis Elevator right now?
I'm a service mechanic. Any repairs, service calls, maintenance.
You're pretty handy with your hands.
Yeah, I've got 34 years in the elevator business with 2 different companies.
So you, something happens, you be able to use that critical thinking and apply it.
I think so, yes.
We are looking for an elevator for here. If you could like bring one from work. That would be good. Talk to Bob about that, yeah.
Well,
Don,
I have no questions for this witness.
but you reserve the right to bring them back.
Oh,
right, great.
I'll move to appoint John Fitzgerald to the role of probationary firefighter underneath Chief Poolin's discretion and advisement.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Welcome aboard.
thank you very much.
Thank
Hate
you.
to put you through the ringer like that, John. Jeez.
That was strenuous.
Nothing
Okay.
prepares you for that. Yeah. Next on the agenda, former Selectman Jim Smith. Would like to talk to the board about a potential warrant article. Jim, how are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Regret the fact we didn't have microphones back in the day, or?
Yeah, and videos, comb my hair.
There you go. So, you asked for an opportunity to talk to the board about potentially establishing a stabilization fund, or?
It's not really a stabilization fund per se. It's different than your regular enterprise accounts that you have like for sports teams or whatnot. It's a fund where it's actually an account where any revenues that come in from ambulance service get put in that account. And then the town meeting has to provide approval to take the money out of the account and spend it for a particular purpose.
So similar to the transfer station enterprise fund then?
Yes, it just
Where
comes under a
the-
different name.
It's targeted only for that purpose?
Correct.
Okay.
So what it does is it allows the fire department, if approved by the Board of Selectmen, to operate the ambulance they currently have. And, being cognizant of the contract we currently have with Action Ambulance, this would only be in situations where Action is unable to fulfill the transport service. And surprisingly, that happens more often than you would think. Cases where multiple ambulances are needed. For example, the accident that happened at the end of Main Street and Summers Road about a month ago. I think there were 4 or 5 ambulances that had to respond to that. There are, traffic accidents where 2 ambulances are needed. There's times when Action Ambulance is out for a legitimate call, and that could be either for a town call or because of mutual aid. Action has to take their ambulance and respond when another community needs an ambulance. So there are occurrences. I'm not going to say a lot of them. I've kind of looked through things. I'm expecting it would be no more than 2 to 3 times a month where there's an occurrence where Action is not available, where an ambulance is needed. Normally, we would rely on a mutual aid ambulance. This would have to be during the day when we have the paramedics on service. And it's an opportunity for Hampden to just get their feet wet, see what, what we can do to provide service. It will provide quicker service under certain circumstances than we currently have, where we have to, where we're waiting for an ambulance to come in from East Long Meadow or Munson, for example. I'm asking that this be put on the warrant. It gives the flexibility to the selectmen to allow this to move forward, and it gives a venue for any revenues that the department gets from ambulance service to go into that account and then come out of that account to fund operations. So that would be to replace the, so for example, if they do a call, there would be a callback for some of the volunteer firefighters. They get paid an hourly stipend for that. So they would have to bring in a few people, 2 or 3 people for that, to fill that gap because our paramedics will be doing the transport. So that would, roughly, I think that's $20 an hour per person right now. So that would be, even if they had to bring in 3, that'd be like $120. And then the consumables and the fuel, all the other stuff is there. The ambulance is there. It is certified, as far as I know. It has been certified recently. And just a little history on this, the Board of Selectmen approved in, and I'm maybe not right with the month, but I believe it was May of 2020, that the Board of Selectmen approved the acquisition of the ambulance through funds that have been donated to the fire department. It is an older ambulance, came from another community. And then in August of that same year, the Board of Selectmen approved the certification of the ambulance. So this is just one more step in that same process.
So this is more of a, you're not saying that we would be taking advantage of this yet, but you're saying this is something that would need to be established if in the future the other ducks lined up, you would need this account, being able to collect money and then disperse money, similar to
Yeah,
other
I believe you can
towns.
collect the money regardless, but disperse, I believe you can.
Well, target the money towards
But
this.
yeah,
basically.
regardless, yeah.
Right.
So it's to allow the money to be dispersed, and I think the wording in here says for personnel services, operating and capital costs. I don't think there'd be any capital costs there, but it would be certainly operating costs and consumables. If they use an oxygen face mask, they have to dispose of that, get a new one.
Well, that's what I thought was analogous to the enterprise fund for transfer. We sell trash bags, the money stays there and pays for the operation of the transfer station. You're billing against some service that the ambulance performed. The money is going to offset expenses down the road for the ambulance service,
That's correct.
much like I'm sure other towns do.
And, one point that I think may come up in the discussion is that the ambulance is BLS, and that is correct. It's not the ambulance itself that's BLS. It's the people that we have to staff it that are BLS certified, not ALS certified. The ambulance is ALS capable. The difference between ALS and BLS, as I understand, is the personnel aboard and the medical equipment that they carry. So just like when currently with Action Ambulance, if they have BLS staffing, they are BLS level service, but they can have an ALS intercept, which basically means that a person that is certified can jump on board with their medicine, their controlled medicines, and provide ALS service. So, and I think that's a common occurrence where a BLS transport initiates because that's the first transport available, and then there's an ALS intercept on the way to the medical facility.
Okay.
How'd you come up with the 20,000?
Wow, I wouldn't say it like that, Don.
Don,
Well, no, why-
No, I
just-
mean, sounds like a,
swag, scientific, wild, you know what?
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
I don't know. I think it's a nominal number. It's not money we're asking for from the taxpayers because we're saying that the money is going to come from that fund. So the money in the enabling legislation for this fund, you can only disperse, you can only spend from the fund that what you've collected. So it's not asking them down to come up with $20,000, put it there and spend it. It's saying as the money is collected, up to $20,000, when it is in there, can be taken out of it to support. the cost.
Are you filing this request at the behest of the fire department?
I'm following the request of myself. I've been on the ambulance committee. I've been to meetings. I've watched. It's been. I've been curious about this for a few years.
So the chief, so you haven't spoken to the chief about it?
I have not spoken to the chief about it.
So this is a citizen's request petition. Don't we need 10 signatures
put something on the warrant.
to put something on the warrant?
I believe that's correct. For the annual town meeting warrant.
For the annual town meeting warrant?
I think there is precedent where the town has fostered warrant articles on behalf of citizens. The citizens petition, the purpose of that is to force an article onto the town meeting when the Board of Selectmen is, for some, whatever reason, is not willing to do that.
Right.
So I think you have the full opportunity and ability to make this decision without 10 signatures.
Would you
You-
like the
you-
board then to
you-
support this and put it on? You're presenting this to the board and would you like the board to endorse this as our petition?
Yes.
Are we setting, what?
You can do it. Citizen petition.
Yeah, I understand that, but are we setting a precedent by not getting the 10 signatures? I mean, someone could come and, how would we deny someone else?
I think
Well, people
there have
suggest-
been
people suggest-
initiatives, and I'm thinking some zoning issues where people have brought something forward to the Board of Selectmen, and the Selectmen have put it on the warrant and supported it.
Well, I think different, maybe zoning, they brought the planning board and planning ran with the ball, or Park and Rec, or different things. I'm sure, Jim, you were on the board for 12 years, 18 years?
12.
12 years. So I'm sure you saw plenty of things like that. And you probably, in your experience, people have come to your board meetings and said, I'd like to see the selectmen address this type of thing. I think you guys should get out ahead of it and do this type of action. If I paraphrase what you're kind of doing here. Are you sure that this is the right verbiage?
I have
100%.
taken the verbiage from an adjoining town meeting. I felt the benefit of asking the selectmen to support this is that if it comes in as a citizen's petition, then it goes onto the warrant as is with no review,
Right.
no council review. And it could get passed and then denied because it doesn't meet
Right.
the
Something. Yeah.
the
The AG looks for
yeah,
things like, yeah.
the little nuances
Defective,
of
is
the
that the
law.
word?
So,
Defective or something?
Yeah, defective, yeah, defective.
so that is the other reason why I've brought it up personally to the Board of Selectmen to sponsor it. I think it is, it's within your, I think it's within your power to do so. And since the fire department is under your jurisdiction, this just gives you the tool, if you so decide to allow the fire department to do this, it gives you the tool to rotate that funding through collections and back to operations.
Jim, I got two questions for you. What happens if we go over 20,000? Does that go into general fund?
Whatever comes in from collections goes into the fund.
So you have $20,000. Is that a limit? Is that a
The limit is the
ceiling?
amount that could be spent during that fiscal year.
Fiscal year. So they
So
need
if
to replace
40,000 came in, you couldn't spend 20,000.
20.
If only 5,000 comes in, you can only spend 5.
it. And this second part here, are you looking for establishing this account? Or are you looking for it as an authorization for the town to approve an ambulance service?
To the best of my research, the town treasurer and/or accountant have the ability to set the account on the books and just say, we're accepting money in under this name. It doesn't have to go to town meeting or anything. It's an accounting entry. And
Right.
then it's town meeting that authorizes the expenditure from that account.
But in order to get the expenditures or to create the cash flow, we would have to utilize the ambulance for service. So we would have to authorize that too, is that right?
Correct.
So do you feel this article is looking to do that? Or is it strictly looking to create an account?
I can answer the question in two ways. Personally, I would like to see it tried, just to see what we go. So yes, I'm looking for it. I'm not looking to force it. It's giving the option of the Board of Selectmen to, if they make a decision to have this service, to have the option that allows any revenues from the service to flow back into the operations.
I'll just preface that Jim and I haven't really talked about this, so everything here I had no influence over, but it sounds very similar to what I had proposed in one of our contract negotiations with Action about establishing our fire department to be a backup to the backup, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., 4 p.m., whatever it is. So it sounds similar to that, and I think by this verbiage here, it's looking for direction from us to solicit the town's opinion on that.
It's not, yeah, it's the town's, I don't know if it would be opinion, but it's the town's
Be authorization to establish an
authorization
account.
to spend out of that account for that purpose.
I was wondering if I were looking at it simplistically, I kind of thought that we were talking about, like I said, an enterprise fund where honestly, if the ambulance went out, first off, this is hypothetical, if it's authorized, if it's staffed, whatever.
Fully understood.
But if the ambulance went out, performed a service that was then billed because they did something,
Yes.
and the check came back, this would be the place that check would go. Is that too simple, or that's kind of what
No,
we're
no,
talking about?
That's it.
Okay.
Well, that would be the place it would go, but you can't take it out without authorization. So now this is the authorization to take it out of that account.
We don't have that
to
account
re-
yet. Shouldn't we establish,
That's what
Yeah.
he's trying to do, but I
I'm
think
trying
this
to-
the second,
The account itself, the accounting entry into the town's ledger,
Mhm.
as far as I know, is a creation of the town treasurer and/or
what, to make that enterprise fund? We don't need an article to create that ambulance
I could
enterprise
not find
fund?
anything on that. I did suggest in my letter when I proposed this, that would be something that we could ask town council.
And I don't know, Bob, your experience, it seemed like,
I've worked in a couple of towns where they have municipal ambulance service, and an account basically was already created, so I
Before
don't
you
know
got
whether
there.
you, or not, you're going to need anything other than the accountant setting up an account called receipts reserved for appropriation. Any revenues would go into that account, and you need town meeting approval, typically in the budget process, to withdraw those funds. One of the questions I think we would have to resolve, if in fact town meeting approves, is collections. The big headache that most private companies have, as well as municipal companies have, is how to collect. And I think we've already seen some of this with action. Do you want to have collections done municipally, or do you want to do a third party? Most communities that run their own ambulance service usually contract with a third party because collections, particularly at the municipal level, are harder to do. Third parties have better ways and are perceived differently, shall we say, than a municipal bill.
I would concur
For ambulance
that-
service.
that I think it would behoove the town to use a third-party collection service.
Don?
So let me be clear, the fire chief you haven't talked to the fire chief about this.
No, I have not.
You haven't talked to the ambulance committee about it.
No,
And you don't have 10 signatures for the citizens petition.
I didn't bring in 10 signatures because
Okay.
I did not feel it was
No,
necessary.
I understand. We could put it on, right?
If you-
And
you-
if we vote to put it on, are we endorsing something we haven't discussed as a board? And we're closing the warrant tonight, so.
Oh, we're not closing tonight yet. We have to put it off because we don't know what's happening with the health department. That may be a thing. Are we gonna need an article for funding?
Yeah,
And
well-
also the shortfall for testing. You have a question on that? Like, I think I meant to send an email out, like, that maybe address that before the advisory hearing next week.
I don't have any more questions.
Okay,
so Jim, in here it says explanation. If directed by the Board of Selectmen, this article allows the town's fire department to provide ambulance transport service and recover the cost of those services using the funds collected for that purpose. So that's where I'm questioning, is this article looking for direction to establish the fire department to run the ambulance service? Because in order to have the fund, they would need to have the service, right? So is this an A and a B?
yeah, I tried to, my explanation was my own wording. I
Yeah.
tried to be as clear about it as possible. It's
Right.
that first, in the first sentence, it has to be something that the Board of Selectmen decides to do independently among the board. And then it's enabling the money that's collected for that purpose to go back and what do you call? And replenish whatever money was spent.
So I go back to the town meeting of 2006 or the 2007. And we had an article at the town meeting to create the enterprise fund and then start funding for the transfer station under 53 F and a half. I don't know why you guys came up with these half things all the time. But I think that would be the step needed to be done. I understand your point, Don. If we do this, are we making a tacit commitment to this in the future? Are we just being proactive? And if we dissolve it, we dissolve it. Because right now, without the service being started, it's not going anywhere, but there is a mechanism in place for it.
By the way, I did ask town council, I did send the email message Mr. Smith sent to us and to you. I sent it to town council just to see what they would recommend. Do they recommend different language? I think it's clear what he's requesting. But, you know, I think we'll get something back from town council, I'm sure this week, which would give the town some direction as to if the decision is to do it, this is the legal way to do it.
Yeah. Again, not being an expert, but I would think the first thing would be establish the account and then the protocol for in and out of the account. I mean, like I say, that's just, I mean, I think you need town action to establish the account for it first. And I think where we are here is that, is the board willing to say, okay, fine, we'll establish the account and we'll work on the in and out later. Right now,
You're establishing an exception to the general rule.
Well, we're not
Revenues
establishing,
go to the general fund.
no, I'm saying,
So
is
my
the
guess
board
is
willing?
that's requiring town
I
meeting
said no,
action.
we
to
are.
put it on the,
We're going to put it on the warrant,
warrant,
yes.
yeah.
If you look at the article before, to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53 F and a half, for the purposes of establishing an enterprise fund to be effective for fiscal year, at that point it was '08. And then the purpose of it to accept payments from yada, yada. And it seemed like that would be
So it's a
the
two-step.
first thing done.
Yeah.
And then every year you would vote to approve money coming in and money going out for the purposes of supporting ambulance service, which we're not at that point here. We're not talking that.
I think the difference here, John, is that this fund is you never sweep the fund for.
That's why, right. That's why these are.
It's
You can't sweep this fund.
It stays there.
Well, that's what this one does. That's why we build up retained earnings in the enterprise fund.
Yeah, but it's
For
not,
future.
it's not an enterprise fund though. It's a different type of fund, but it's
I'm
a
sure,
similar concept.
But I'm saying this allows retained earnings. It's not a revolving fund. This allows retained earnings.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, you know, if we sell extra bags, you save it till next year. Yeah. That's why you want to get away from the revolving fund thing, exactly. Because you'd have to like clean it out. Yeah. So is the board willing to entertain this in the, I don't know, the way I see it here, but that's just based on past practice. We have, Don, you're correct. We don't have a citizen petition in front of us, but we do have a long-term member of the advisory committee, board of selectmen, respecting what he did, asking for the board's endorsement going forward.
If you would prefer it as a signed petition and the warrant you alluded to earlier is not closing tonight, it will be at the subsequent meeting. I can have sufficient signatures at that point in time. If that frees you to maintain, and I understand you want to maintain an arm's length from citizens and initiatives going directly onto a town meeting warrant.
Right.
So I fully understand that.
Well, the only reason I personally would like that idea, because it would seem to be, we have some questions about the wording here. And if we're not going to close the warrant today, would we allow Mr. Smith to go research exactly what verbiage we're talking about here? Because there seems to be a little ambiguity. Jim, you said the same thing yourself. Town council looking it over would be a good idea, or researching it and have him come back with the citizen petition next week and submit it. And then,
Yeah.
basically at that point, all we're saying is, are we agreeing to hold the warrant open, and then it's Jim's issue to come back with the 10 signatures? It's not us one way or the
If
other.
he comes back with the 10 signatures,
then it's
It's
by
already-
law, by law.
it's already-
Yeah, right.
But if I come back with the 10 signatures, and this is why I approached it this way, if I
Right.
come back with the 10 signatures, then whatever wording I have on there is
Is
what goes
what it
onto the
is.
You're
warrant.
stuck with, right.
There's no opportunity for legal counsel review. So if there is a miswording on there and it passes town meeting, it may be subsequently turned down by, it goes
Right.
to the Attorney General. I'm not sure who it goes to for
Mhm.
approval.
Right, so we're gonna roll the dice with that, or we can,
I mean, either way, it still has to go through town council approval. I mean, if we throw something on there, and it's not put in properly.
Yeah, but what Jim is saying is that it could go to town meeting, it could pass, it could go to the Attorney General, whoever, I'm not sure who does it, and they say no.
Right.
That's correct, you know, because we didn't dot an I or cross a T.
and even
I
if
mean, I
town
can-
council says no, it's still, like Jim, like, it's the verbiage you submit.
Yeah.
She could say, oh my gosh, that's wrong.
Yeah,
It
because the
is what it
selectmen have
is.
no authority to
Right.
change the verbiage of
mean,
a
And Bob
petition.
did say you sent it to council today, right?
Yeah.
You did say you sent it to council anyway.
Yeah, that I, so,
I wasn't around. Right. I had a sense that this was going to be significant discussion,
right.
and so I sent it to town council just to see what the response would be.
Well, not to dictate, but again, if Jim is asking for our forbearance to hold the warrant open till next Monday and allow him to collect the thing, I think because we also had a question about, are we going to need a warrant article to fund a shortfall for the transfer station testing? We still had a question about whether we could close this week anyhow. Because we are going to be, we're going to need an appropriation, probably from stabilization for that shortfall. I don't think we're going to find,
What does that
40
do, what does that do with the advisory committee hearing though?
that's something we do it, right, you know, they don't meet till 7, so
Yeah,
we'll give them a prep when they come here tonight. Hey, we might have one more to throw in.
2 more.
I mean,
Two
Can we
more,
even close the
exactly,
warrant if it's not on
yeah.
the agenda?
Hmm?
Can we even close the warrant if it's not on the agenda?
That was the other email I sent.
Yes, I saw
That we
that
had
one.
pushed it, yeah. So maybe move.
Right.
So we're not quite done yet. So Don brings up a good point, or I think it was Craig brought up a good point. Since it's not on the agenda, team, it may be moot. So we're closing the warrant next Monday, Jim.
Okay,
That tell you anything?
thank you. You gave me my
That tell you
gave me my
anything?
answer.
That kind of gives you your answer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Robin, did you have a quick comment?
I would just like the selectmen to really think about, this would actually put another burden on the taxpayer in the long run. We have, it doesn't make sense to create this when we already have mutual aid at the citizens, we already have a contract and there's no additional cost. So this would add, we would add a billing company, a third party. It would incur a lot of expense. And I think take away, it doesn't make sense to me. If there's three people at the fire department and they have to respond to a call, that leaves one person to respond to either an accident, a fire, a brush fire that could get out of hand pretty quickly
Mhm.
for a mutual aid situation. Whereas if we have a transport situation
Mhm.
that's being responded, that can be responded from mutual aid, that will have a lot less negative impact. You know,
No.
they may be able to wait the 5 minutes where the fire department is the fire department. If something happens, they need to respond right away. So to
That's
have
valid.
backup, and we have to pay them $20 an hour. I mean, how are we gonna? It's, I think there's a lot that needs to be thought about, and I think there's a lot of expense involved. And since we already have mutual aid for those few times that need a transport or a backup,
Mhm.
I think that this would just be a cost to the taxpayer that's unnecessary.
Okay.
Thank you, Robin.
Don, any more questions?
No,
for this
I'm all
witness?
set. Okay.
Thank you. Jim,
I
thank you.
just want to reinforce the fact that the revenues, just as with the private ambulance services, should more than offset the costs. So I think that, I share her concern. I share Robin's concerns about spiraling expenses, but I think in this case, it's not an issue. Thank you.
No, but it's definitely a concern. Thank you for both of you bringing it up, and I mean, you're aware of it, Jim, and yeah. That's right. So,
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, should we see you next week?
I guess so.
All right. Right on time.
Really?
No, not close. Hey, Finn, how you doing? How's your mom?
She's doing well.
Yeah, good, good. Enjoying the leisure?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Finn, you're here in your role as head of the shared health group. You've let the board know there's a bit of a cost overrun in this year's budget. And the board would kind of like to know, A, when that happened or how that happened. Now, when looking over the agreement and screen share it, there's supposed to be this biannual meeting as well as quarterly meetings. Now, I'm not aware of those happening per se, but Bob, you're supposed to be at all those meetings. Has that been happening
We meet over Zoom,
for the quarterly?
yes.
But the biannual, which is supposed to include the boards of health of all 4 towns in the group.
That hasn't occurred.
Right. And Don, I'm sure, is biannual every other year or twice a year? Twice a year, right?
Biennial is every other year.
Every other year.
Yeah. So, but we're in the
Yes.
second year, so by now we
Yeah.
should have had
Right.
So,
that meeting.
yeah, with the MOU, we were developing the bylaws on how that board would govern. That's taken some time. We eventually finished it just late last year. Sent it to town council. They reviewed it. They found some discrepancies between that and what's in the MOU. So to fix that, we basically have to make an amendment to the MOU. That amendment is completed with the track changes in it, which will need to be then signed off by each board. And then once we have that in place, we should be able to appoint those members to that board. Start having those,
Members of what board?
the oversight board, I guess. you
They're
could call
called out in the agreement. It's the boards of health of the 4 towns,
it. Right.
plus the town administrator / manager.
Right.
That's the meeting supposed to happen every other year. So we're
Yeah.
coming down to the end of the second year, and we're still planning how to have that meeting?
I think we're working through the bylaws and how everything would work in the meetings when it comes to voting on stuff or what. needs to
That
be
part,
done. Yeah,
that part. You're not talking representation, like what happens afterwards.
right.
My recollection is that the bylaws were pretty much completed, but that we all decided to wait for a response from the town of Munson, where in the past at least, they've come up with a number of different amendment proposals. So in anticipating that would happen again, we wanted to wait until they came back. As far as I know, they haven't.
Well, I know that watching their meetings, the board of health over there is kind of in a state of flux.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe that's a reason for that. They have a separate board of health, different than what we do.
Mhm.
I know there was, Bob, you heard from, I believe, the town administrator in Wilbraham that there was perhaps some interest in having a
Yes.
administrator, town manager, perhaps chairman of the board of health as well. I want to say high level, but more compartmentalized meeting to discuss this. Is that something? I know you said Lynn is away.
Lynn
He's on
is
the
expected
medical
back
leave, but yeah.
sometime this month.
Yep.
Okay.
There. I had a response from Jennifer in Munson, a response from Nick Bro, and I just sent back a message to him this afternoon saying, I think that's a good idea. So
Mm.
that's
Okay.
where it stands. I think we will put a meeting together. And we were even thinking of maybe some of the funds at least could come for the shortfall, could come from the opioid settlement monies. We don't have a lot, but there's a new round coming out.
Well, before we pay anything, let's talk
Yeah.
about what we're gonna
Oh,
pay.
yeah, okay.
Well, yeah, before we pay the bill, let's find out how we got the bill.
Yeah.
So Finn, you want to give us a quick recap of?
So February 9th, so
Actually,
February,
Don, one second.
I just
Craig,
had-
I'm so sorry.
I just
You're
had a
chair of the Board of
question.
Health, it's really your.
I wanted to
yeah, your thing.
rewind back to year one, when we had the grants come in.
Yeah.
Was there any overages in year one?
No, there wasn't.
Were we under or were we
Yeah, we
running?
were under, main reason being that we were still building the staff, we weren't fully staffed. That was the main reason.
Were you able to keep that money? Or-
No, we weren't able.
We had to give it back.
So you don't get the whole grant, you bill against it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And year two and year three are still grant funded, correct?
That's correct.
In the MOU, I was looking, I don't see anything about employee raises, cost of living and stuff like that. So I was just going under the assumption that year two and year three were still going to be funded completely 100% from the grant. But the overages now, I think you had mentioned before, they were from cost of living raises and stuff like
It
that.
was, yeah, mainly from those indirect costs, that I guess weren't factored into the initial budget. Because the original budget basically covered the salaries of the shared service employees, with some money for supplies.
And that's way back before it even started. You're talking about year one was factored in with that money, but year two and year three weren't factored in with any additional
No,
expenses.
year one was funded.
Well, you developed the grant based on your year one
Year one
number.
Yes, yeah,
Right.
yeah, right.
But there was no escalator in the contract with the state or
No,
there
When-
was a flat same every year.
So we're at the tail end of year two now. We're going into year three. And at the end of every fiscal year, for year two, for year three, budgets will be developed by the Board of Health Director and approved by the member communities in accordance with available grant funding.
Yep.
So shouldn't we have had this conversation a year ago?
that's a good question. I probably should have.
Because then we would have said, okay, we have to decide on a budget. There's gonna be a shortfall going in.
Sure.
So
Yeah, didn't anticipate with those indirect costs being that much that we'd have that shortfall. Being those money should have essentially budgeted to cover the salaries of the 4 staff members.
So do you, 4 staff members is what you're saying?
Yeah.
And that's for the 3 towns here, or four towns?
4 towns. Yeah, that initial year we did have more funding because there was that initial startup funding that we used.
So from year 1 to year 2, what was the salary increase that caused that to go up, the percentage, you know?
So from year 1, we only had, it was me and the public health nurse. We had those 2, the inspector and the coordinator that weren't filled yet. That's why we didn't reach that maximum amount. And then now year 2, we finally got a full staff. The wages of those new staff members did come in higher than I was expecting. I guess, main reason being is that to get people that are certified and can do the job properly.
You had to pay
get
the market
right
rate.
applicants, we had to pay
And
that.
who sets the wages? Is it because they're employees of Long Meadow? Does
Yeah.
Long Meadow set the wages? So is that,
Yeah.
do they fall underneath Long Meadow's budget for the year? And this is a reimbursement to their salary, or is this completely separate from Long Meadow's budget?
That's a good question. I'm not sure that I know that answer.
Hmm.
How they factored that.
Well, you get a paycheck. Is it from the town of Long Meadow?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm guessing the grant funding reimburses the town of
Oh,
Long
yes,
Meadow.
okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I might
right.
have misunderstood what you're asking, but
Yeah.
yeah, it does. So we're all
Okay.
complete, Long Meadow employees get paid through Long Meadow.
So that's how we got here. Maybe there should have been, like Craig said, the budget meeting, et cetera. And we had a little more awareness that, hey, we're looking at a bit of a snowball here because we had to hire people at the market rate, which is more than we figured.
Yeah.
But to get people to do the job, this is what you had to pay.
Yeah.
Where we are now. Don?
So originally you thought the overage was gonna be like 150,000, and it was 197, right?
Okay, yeah.
Right? Not okay. but- Yeah, but so how much was the grant for, how much was the PHE for in the second year?
2,
229.4, sound right?
Yeah.
Okay. How come we didn't get the 287.5 like the original first year?
The first year, the additional funding was for the startup that was used to help develop the MOU and the bylaws through the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
Okay, all right. So that's where that shortage came in there, okay? And then and then on the, on the OPED and some of the other things, you're giving us projections for FY '24, but this is a bill for FY '23. So I don't know if those numbers are accurate in there.
That's a worksheet that I got from our accounting and finance director, so I can ask them exactly.
Yeah, because if the discrepancies in '23, you're adding into FY '24 numbers, so we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
The other thing, this is a minor issue, this one here. But on the invoice that was sent, it says responsible based on population 11.8, right? 23,291, except the total down here is 23,366.
Oh, that must have, I'm sorry, that's an error. So this is the top number of what is due. It's not the
Okay,
bottom.
so this,
That must have just been.
that's number there, okay.
I can
And-
send you a revised.
Yeah, I could send us a revise, and then you're gonna look at, so we need to have you look at the health insurance, because we need the FY '23 cost, not the FY '24. The OPED, FY '23 and FY '24. And also in there, one of the things was that you had, that was sent over on the worksheet, was that the insurance was going up 5%. I believe the Scantic Valley is going to go up 2% for FY '24. And the other thing is on the MOU, it says that we'll go by the 2020 census.
Yep.
We're at 11.4 now, 11.8,
Okay, so
So
that needs to be updated.
trying to save $50 there.
That's a good point.
All right, and,
The 2020 census, right?
right, what else we got here?
Sounds like these are all good points for that meeting that Bob is gonna have. with
Yeah,
you.
those are,
Yeah.
that's why I bring them up.
So the shortfall for this current budget year is, Don's just saved us $500, but
No,
top
it's,
number was how much?
well, it's 23,291.51, but we're
That's
gonna
the current
change
year.
that because because the numbers that they've got in there are for FY '24, not FY '23, so we need new numbers.
Oh, so you upped it based on projected, not on current?
That, he just went by the worksheet that they
Yeah,
gave him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I will get it corrected.
Good
I'll
as-
bring
okay.
that back
That
to my
answer.
accounting team and
But,
finance director.
but let me just say,
Yeah.
I imagine we're not far off ballpark wise. You're anticipating,
Right, yeah.
yeah,
we're
23
probably
maybe go
not-
down, but you're probably 20,000 a hole
I
for
would
it.
say,
Okay.
yeah.
Right, so as far as funding it, and this is just a thought now, we asked Jane, we received 16,800 in fees.
Mhm.
So if and we have to ask our beloved accountant and treasurer about this, if we paid what we owe out of ARPA, can we reimburse ARPA from the fees?
That money's already in the general fund, correct?
But we could do a warrant article or something to do that? Yeah,
Yeah.
special within the
No.
annual?
Actually, I had some research into that. You can actually have a warrant article for an appropriation inside the current fiscal year at the town meeting. It can only come from the stabilization fund. You know, you cannot raise and appropriate. That's the limitation now because you've already set the tax rate. But that would be the thing, you know, and this goes back to my other question, like you have the 20,000 for this, where we're gonna find a 30. I mean, if I ask Cliff, Cliff is pretty good at finding shortfalls, but we have two bills here totaling $50,000, $60,000. And that's a little much for line to line. You know. No, I'm talking, no, the second bill is the transfer station testing.
Let me finish with Finn.
No, but I'm saying,
Getting ahead of
in
ourselves.
terms of how we're gonna treat it, you're
Yeah.
asking, how do we do this?
Yeah.
We may be stuck with a warrant article.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
So you're gonna check on OPED, on health insurance,
Actually,
on, what's the other one there? Oh, the Medicare, so it'll be the 23 price one, okay? Did you get my email about the tuberculosis?
Yeah, I did. I didn't get a chance to respond because I wanted to ask the public health nurse, but the data that we got, it's pulled from the state communicable disease surveillance
Yeah.
team through Maven, and that's what it pulled for. That's for all 4 towns, though. It's not just
Yeah.
but
Well,
it's
there's
still
only, but my
consolidated.
point was that there was only 153 in the state,
Right.
and we had 40 of them, which just didn't sound right to me.
Right. I will ask my public health nurse, but all that data was pulled straight from the state website.
Right, but is that as bad as, remember Don, we were saying the COVID
Hampden
things, where
County.
every Hampden County came
Yeah.
under Hampden? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, we had 300 COVID cases and East Lamont had 2.
Yeah.
Right,
I
yeah.
know. Right.
Which we didn't know. It was
Right, exactly, what I mean.
I'm also, he's gonna check on that and give us a new bill.
Yeah.
That is, Don, you bring up a good point. Perhaps both of these could be subsidized by ARPA if the board so wished.
just we can't reimburse.
Because the budget is set, tax rate is set, can't raise and appropriate.
No, we can transfer
Take it
only,
out of-
right,
Any
stabilization.
free cash you have, you can take it, you can do a
Well,
stabilization.
We
I
don't.
think both of them are clearly, one's public health and one's.
That's what I'm saying, we could do
water,
ARPA, it's cleaner.
Right?
Yeah,
Fits the bill.
yeah.
And
But-
sorry.
One of the problems we have that I think Wilbraham doesn't have is they've got a health department budget. And so transfers will work for them.
Mhm.
In a conversation with the town accountant this morning, he's saying transfers, in our case, because we do not have a budget now,
Right.
Mhm.
become a problem.
We don't need to go anywhere, right?
No, I don't think so, but I think if we had, I think Don, back to your thing, if we had a bill come into Board of Health expense, we used ARPA funds to help pay that bill, that might be the mechanism to go through, find the proper line item. That's something to explore.
The selectmen
Yeah.
control ARPA funds.
Right.
So
I just don't want a shortfall the future water project, that's all.
wouldn't have to go.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one thing too for FY '24. We've been going through this capacity assessment with the state. They've been very pleased so far with our work. And so they said it's been one of the more successful shared services in the state, and that they're looking to potentially be funding us. We have a verbal commitment of potentially being funded more for FY '24. So it's possible that there won't be another shortfall.
What's Don's favorite saying?
Show me the money.
I actually read that.
I thought it was no dogs.
Oh,
Like, yeah. Quickly, Finn, just talking about 4, what about 25? Where are we going after this? What's the projection?
So there's also been talk, again, you could use the same thing, but there's talk that they're gonna potentially fund for even future years. They don't say how many, but
It's on the table.
it's on the table.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, perfect.
Thanks,
Vin.
Vin.
Thank you. Best to your mom.
So are we gonna wait to have that meeting with the communities and get a final number before we do an ARPA vote?
Yeah, because that's gonna change everybody's numbers.
It will be.
Well, the thing is, okay, so, but we need to know by next Monday, if we're not gonna do an article, our only recourse to pay them both
Is
bills is
ARPA.
from ARPA, right? So, all right.
All right.
I'd like to invite the Hampden Advisory Committee and the financial team up to the table. I can't hear you back there, that's why. Which is kind
Complaining.
of, that's how they like it. The strong, silent type.
All right.
Is this new?
We don't know.
Don, I think, yeah,
Yeah,
Bob
that
just
came
brought
in
him to
today.
us.
That came
He
in.
doesn't, does he date them? Yeah, 4/3, there you go.
4-3. There's the MOU.
Just our part only, Carol.
So are these,
Those are updated selectmen budgets. They have 4 pages.
can you give me a sense of what's been updated and what I don't have to look
Building
at?
liability insurance, we got the information that it will increase between 10 and 12%. I put a number in there at 11%.
Okay,
Stormwater at 50.
yep.
I don't know if you have seen this since the PA budget was established at 100 rather than 130.
Yes, that's the number we're working with.
think that's where we are.
Just look at mine and see if I have some questions for you.
You asked about the town events number?
Yes, but I understand that's for the tree.
Tree.
Yep.
Actually, the tree itself is not so expensive. It's going to be installation, and right now, I mean,
There you
Jane
go,
came in
Carol.
today with
We picked one?
a
Jane did.
request for approval, but this would be in the current fiscal year if we did that. So we'd have to see if we can pay for it.
How much is the,
current year, in which
well,
case we could reduce that.
how much is
number
the
that you've
tree?
got.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
really getting into the weeds here, okay.
So is, the shared services, is that a warrant article? We talked last time about needing to add that into the budget, Dick?
Mhm.
Yeah, we should do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Put it in
We've
the
kicked
operating
that
budget.
Right. Right now, I think you heard from Finn, I don't think they really have a good definition of what that number is going to be for next year.
I think so. I mean, he was what, 23 and change, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for 1 year, and
For, yeah, it's what they were projecting for 24 is what he said. You know, after Don beat him up, he may be down to
Yeah.
21.
yeah, but for next year, so
$50, I heard.
if we're off by 5,000, you can address it in the fall with perhaps a
So
little
in
extra
terms of
free
for
cash.
next week, you know, in terms of, we have our public hearing next week.
Mhm.
Put that in.
Right, so you're looking for a line on the last page, probably under Board of Health, between Board of Health expense and Public Health nurse, something, or Board of Health shared services. Yeah.
What were we saying, 25?
Yeah, I think that's what.
Yeah.
The ARPA funding at 1.5 million, there's between 500,000 and 600,000 remaining. Haven't looked lately. Unallocated.
But you're anticipating that going towards the water issues,
Yeah,
Mhm.
right now.
correct?
Yeah. Employee benefits, I see requested at 574, 217. I am incredibly impressed, but I prefer a rounder number. You know, somebody comes on, some insurance changes, I think budgeting it down to the dollar like that would be,
You want to round up, is that what you're saying?
yeah. You know, we see it before, as people see the fact that we're up to 75% this year. A new person comes on, we are going to be having a couple personnel changes in the next budget year. So I think being prudent about that,
We'll do 575.
I'd like to see it, you know, 590, 580, 590. I think a round number is much than
We-
574,
every-
217.
Every bit's gonna matter to us, John. We're,
Okay.
you know, looking really tight, so.
580, please.
We
And
can't
then
just
if,
randomly go up 20,000 on it, just.
then 580, please. I think a number like that is too specific. You know how things go. Yeah. Again, we'll know more in October.
So, and in terms of, when does the warrant close?
We're going to vote to close it next Monday. It was not on the agenda for this week, so we're going to do it first thing Monday. We don't anticipate, you heard the conversation perhaps when you came in or perhaps just before you. There may be a citizen petition to add an article for basically an enterprise fund for ambulance services. I think at that point, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's the only change we could anticipate to the warrant at this point.
You didn't have a deadline for people to submit?
The citizen petitions can be submitted up until any time it's closed. All they need is 10 signatures.
And will we have dollar figures for the warrant articles next week for our public hearing?
You'll have them tomorrow. I mean, that one won't affect, in my opinion, it shouldn't encumber any money.
So some warrant articles that were placeholders, we'll have the real deal tomorrow.
I think the only placeholders on there were pretty much talking ones. We see the ones, if you want to go over, it, we can start that. No, that's good.
No, that's okay.
No, now's a good time. Town reports. I know I haven't finished mine. Bob hasn't finished his. Thank you.
I finished mine.
Thank you, Carol. Show off. That was the way it was in school, wasn't it?
It
Yeah.
was. But you were much older than me, John, so I wouldn't know. We didn't spend
Oh. Ouch. That was nice, huh? All right, we talked about the budget.
Article 3,
None. Revolving funds, we wanted to reestablish the Board of Health Fund. We've had some guidance that may be difficult. That if we reestablish it, we cannot use it for the same purposes that we did before. Did I hear that from either Dick or Cliff? Mm-hmm. Okay, so now as we're getting perk fees, things like that, which have now been re-targeted towards the general fund, they cannot go back to a Board of Health revolving fund. Okay. So I guess the plan is, I mean, Craig, do we have a new revenue stream that would be used for the Board of Health fund?
Article 20,
Testing.
21.
I'm still on 4.
Oh, sorry.
She was always so quick, seriously.
Only thing is the transfer station testing. That's, no funds are gonna be coming out.
Yeah, no, we have a line, yeah, so, okay. Enterprise fund, Craig, do we have a ballpark, same 100 or 90 or,
I think when I was talking to James, we roughly the same as last year.
okay, no bag
No
purchases
bags this
basically.
year, no, we're good
Okay.
with things.
So the only difference would be
Not a
a
bag.
small, probably a small increase for the raises that the employees got, and that would be about it.
We get some new employees, so salaries might have come down a little bit.
So they're starting at a lower step, and so might be an
That's
offset.
not- That would be going in this article.
No.
That would be, correct, that would be in the budget.
Well, they're paid out of the enterprise fund. So, I mean, if
Are
they're,
you looking for any allocation on?
no, there's no appropriation. I'm saying the number in that article will be just, I'm telling you, it's changing, but there's no town appropriation to fund that. I think it'll still be self-funding. Since there's no bag purchase needed this year, there's no big number. CPA, that's done.
Is the solar, all the solar activity going to change any of the expenses up at the transfer station? Is it
No,
gonna
that-
Change any of the operation at all?
No, the number that we're getting back in terms of lease and personal property tax, 95% of it goes to the town coffers, and a small portion, $5,000, goes to the Conservation Committee. But it won't impact transfer station operations at all.
They've been busy up there.
Yep. CPA, Doug, anything?
There's 2 requests. There's one for land trust for that property over on.
Yep, Hickory area, yeah, yeah.
There's one from the schools for an ADA compliant playground at Green Meadows.
Let's talk about that earlier, with some people who were part of the fundraising we did back for that playground in the back. And I think that's actually the second one that's gone in there. There's not a way to leave the playground. I understand they want to make it ADA, but they can't like put a new part on so that it's such in good shape. I mean, I hate to.
They're not talking replacing it. They're talking, I think, some apparatus. that
Okay,
will-
good, good.
Addition.
Yeah, adaptive as opposed to replacing or repairing.
Mhm.
I had the same question because the newer kindergarten side of Green Meadows
Mm.
isn't that old.
No,
It's, you know, it's designed and built as a person's playground.
is there a dollar number for what they're looking?
I'll say it's a 150.
And that would be,
The school district also put a request into the Wilbraham CPA for a similar
Oh.
request for super low.
a mile tree?
They're doing like matching requests.
Limited recreation would be the area?
Recreation.
Probably, okay.
We just had a meeting with Parks and Rec earlier. The issue came up about the spray park. That was purchased largely with CPA funds.
Mhm.
So I thought that CPA funds could be spent for repair of property that was purchased with CPA funds. So I told them if they could, get something together very quickly, might be able to get it into this year
Or,
for CPA.
Oh, something like that?
They need to do
Okay.
some significant work on Spray Park. So anyway, we'll know next week.
and we're still building up a ton of money in affordable housing and nobody asking for it, yeah. Talking to Lisa earlier over at the Housing Authority, nothing is coming forward this year for that. You know, there's no outstanding issue.
I don't think we've hit the 10%.
No.
Over the years.
Mhm.
There's been a few here and there.
Mhm.
It certainly doesn't add up to 10%.
Okay. Conservation Fund,
Usually 1,000.
well, yeah, but they got that 5,000 from the landfill, feel free to knock it down. Let's see, state aid. Did we actually get the firm letter from the state? The chapter 90 letter, have you seen it? No, I don't think so, yeah. Yeah. Since last year. Checks. Yeah, right. So my understanding, I think, talking to you about it, they're not even close on the budget at this point. Yeah. I mean, we typically see late, but with the change in administration, it's got to be playing havoc with any state-funded program such as. But the library's in good shape. Their number's good.
I thought that was going to be under CPC.
This, if I understand correctly, this has to do
It's
with
stump grinding, isn't it?
stump grinding on South
South
Road.
Road,
The access to the trailhead for the Chuck Mountain Trail.
Did she send an email saying it was less?
There was something a little while back, yeah.
Like 3,200 rings a bell.
I mean, I have not seen anything on this in quite some time, so. No, we
I
have,
think we did.
I think this is the first we're seeing this.
Wasn't that work on the rear of the truck for,
Yeah, he wants to change
right? Isn't that the apparatus for,
the hoses don't fit.
basically, yeah.
Certain hoses don't fit, so you gotta put a bigger hose handle fitter thing on there.
Yeah.
Just a
Technically, it's called the
technical
fitter thing.
explanation.
I don't recall a conversation of this needing to see it.
No.
Okay, so it's not just me. So
No,
this
it's
is
not you.
this is the first we're seeing.
Do you have a dollar amount?
What?
215,000?
No, that's the new truck. No. Yeah, sorry.
That's the highway truck. What about the- do you have a number for the
10,000
fire
sticks in my
renovation?
head, but don't, you
Well,
know,
the 10,000 sticks in my head, that was our part of the other truck. That was the 10,
yeah, but he's never given us a number on that either.
well, he said. he
Can we
didn't
get
have
that
a-
number for Monday night? For the
Yes, yeah.
All right, so I need fire truck renovation, defibrillators.
Do we have a number for those?
12, yeah, there's a paper going around somewhere, right?
Do we have a quote on the,
Scott had it.
How much is it?
we don't have it. If you were here for detail.
We kind
Okay.
of like it.
Yeah.
Full detail.
All right, the FEMA grant, as we referenced, they were looking for a match from the town in the 10,000 range. And the chief was mentioning it hadn't been locked in. He might have said it was 11, but it's that low. They're funding 200 plus of the new truck.
Are they expecting to know that number before town meeting, or are we gonna have to just carry a number?
We might have to just carry a number. Okay, all right. We'll get those three numbers from the chief for you, okay? Dump truck, I think you said 215, that's the 215. Hopefully a good
Well,
number.
A few things going down.
Yeah, hopefully it stays. We'll confirm that. Yeah. So we'll have both Ed and Mark at your meeting next week, so they can answer these. So master plan, where we are with that is that 3 companies responded to the RFQ, whatever, gave quotes. All 3 numbers were well over the $75,000 a grant that Bob got. The grant also included a provision that the spending needed to begin by April 30th, which they couldn't do. They couldn't authorize and start spending on something when they knew they didn't have enough money for the authorization. So at this point, it's kind of not dead in the water, but it'll be coming up again. So they'll be making a presentation at us, probably planning board.
So does the grant go away?
Well, if it wasn't billed against by April 30th, that's my understanding. And we couldn't bill against it because there was nobody, not even close to 75,000. They actually negotiated some, and the price on one of them went to 95. So maybe they're not very, I don't know, they're pretty good, but, I think they had made the point, Bob had made the point as well as Jason, with a couple of other places. 6 figures for a good match. So the 75 was probably, without a lot of virtual and minimal performance, was really never going to fly. So,
So what do you see for this article then?
just a talking point. Yeah, no appropriation,
No action.
no action. Yep. Capital budget, oh, sorry.
The highway truck, dump truck.
Mhm.
Mark says it went from 215 to 222.46. He had noted 229 in the warrant just for anticipating the increase. That was in the email sent on March 8th.
Yep. Okay. School department capital budget. This has been back and forth so many times. Doug, do you have any kind of sense of?
No.
Can we
No, I
quote?
mean, I know the issue of the capital number that came through on the school assessment letter
Mhm.
is exactly that. It's an assessment. So it's not a request for funding, it's a demand for funding.
Right.
Our preference, and I think, speaking for myself, because as a committee, we haven't come to a vote on the issue, but my sense would be that we would prefer to see the capital items voted separately from the operating budget for the school, separate issues, and within those 5 capital items they listed, in our opinion, each of them has a different priority. So
if you're saying, if we're agreeing that that's part of the assessment and you go down on one of them, are you denying the entire assessment? Because I always thought that the assessment lives and dies on its own.
Well, exactly. I mean, as you know, the opinion of town council was that we had to vote the assessment number,
Mm-hmm.
inclusive operating and capital all rolled into one.
Right.
If that's what we have to do, then the school committee will hopefully reconsider their assessment letter, take the capital off of it. They're meeting Thursday night, and I believe there's going to be a request made by one or both of our representatives that they reconsider this issue, they being the school committee. Obviously, they don't have to.
Okay, but say they don't add it into the assessment letter, then how do they do it, not a demand, but a billing to the two towns for the capital needs?
I would suggest that the way to do it would be as a request to the towns for consideration of an article for X. Doesn't have to be done as a demand, it can be done as a
Right.
request to place an article on the annual town warrant or the special town warrant for
Right.
consideration of whatever. It doesn't have to be done as an assessment.
Mhm.
In the same way that we did the switches with the ARPA funding, that was just done as a request to the towns.
So there's ongoing discussion about this, and at this point, a placeholder or might take action.
Yeah, well, what I know is that our two representatives are aware of the issue.
Mhm.
And I believe that they are going to request that the issue be reconsidered by the school committee.
Mhm.
That's what I can say for certainty.
Okay. Just for clarity, would you agree, the capital budget they're asking for is for Minichog only, right? I'd like to see that in the article description. I think that would matter to people. Now, we're not talking about the capital budget for the district, we're talking capital needs for Minichog, commonly held property. I think that clarification,
The only place would be appropriate for us. to
right, and that
reconsider
clarification would be
capital
important, I
expenditure.
think,
Right.
so. When do you think they're meeting for the next discussion?
I think they're meeting Thursday.
Thursday.
Holy Thursday? After Mass?
Heathens.
I don't think we know if the capital comes off the assessment letter, we get our traditional assessment letter back. I don't know how they present those 5 items, either as an all up or all down, or a menu.
Well, to you all, game planning it out. Say they take it off the assessment letter, we have now the capital request for 5 items. In your mind, do they each require, if you want to do it menu-wise, do they each require a warrant article? Or are they like a CPA thing in the past, Doug, where you've had a CPA article and we have separate votes on
I think
everything?
that would depend on Rose's opinion.
What do you think, Dick?
Even if you wanted to vote them separately, you could have multiple motions on one of them. That's not a problem. I would just leave a placeholder in there for Minichog capital items, in case we need it on the warrant. So if they do change the assessment letter, it's discussion of how you want it. In theory, it comes from the budget calculator. Whether you want to do a motion for some amount.
Mhm. Like I say, when we did the CPA one, sometimes the motion, the article would be this, but you'd have 3 motions for different things inside. Yeah, yeah, okay.
I would just say you definitely put a placeholder in there, unless you're sure they're not gonna change it.
Not sure of anything. Yeah,
Well, they're meeting Thursday, the school committee's meeting Thursday, so
Yeah.
they'll know.
all right. I would say if it goes this way, the board would be happy to meet with you and decide how we're going to word that motion. Don, would you agree with that, well,
What about the discrepancy between, if you know anything about this, for this, but the discrepancy between what the Wilbraham Finance Committee wants and the selectmen over there in the region? that gonna get resolved?
Well, there are ongoing discussions. The, our members of the school committee have been made aware of the preference that the towns be on the same page as the school committee and that we not be basically fighting this out at town meeting. It's the school committee's choice whether or not they want to do a consensus number that everybody agrees on, or whether they want to just go for the number that they want
See what
and
happens.
see what happens.
So right now, you're prepared to fund the assessment as presented. That's in your current budget.
That's what we're carrying.
Right.
The whole
okay.
thing
Right.
is in our budget. yes.
And if they come to the negotiated lower number and redo the assessment letter, so much the better for us.
Right. And if they go to redo the assessment letter, then the whole assessment letter is on the table.
Right. Right. But game planning, this has happened in the past, you both know. If we hear about one town says yes, and one town says no, you're into the 1/12, two-town, I mean, the whole thing.
We have emphasized the need to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to arrive at a budget. Just a question of whether we do it the hard way or the easy way. And let's go the collaborative way and try and come up with a number that we can all live with. Frankly, we're all going to pay. The town's going to both pay more than we want to.
Right.
The district's going to get less than it wants.
Like we
Unless they decide to take it to town meeting. If they want a floor fight, and they're going to fight for their number, maybe they're going to get it.
Well, there are some things in play, like we were talking about earlier. The state budget's still in a pretty good flux at this point. There's talk I saw on the MMA page about some special funding. Aaron was referring to the huge updates in the cost, 14% or something for their special ed. But there's talk about funding from the state to offset those costs for districts. Should we be talking about, I want to say, recessing part of the budget to later when the state actually has a budget for us, and see it perhaps that modifies what the school's looking for their number because they're getting more from the state and don't need as much from the town?
They have acknowledged that they're carrying a conservative estimate on their revenue side, which is what they were advised by whatever their guiding body is.
Mhm.
I don't, conceptually, I don't have a problem with it. I'm just not sure it's permissible. In the sense that the school, the statute says the regional school districts have to present that assessment letter to us, the timeframes.
Sure.
So I'm just not sure that we have the flexibility to defer that determination.
Well,
as a town.
deferring enough, I think you're talking about the 45-day thing,
Well,
right? So how would you push town meeting back far enough to give them enough latitude to come up with a better number? Even if you had it on June 30th, bring back, they'd have to have a new assessment by May 15th. And would this, actually, they have enough time, would the state actually have their game together enough to give them more information? Because don't they have to present the assessment letter 45 days before town meeting?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So if you're going to have the town meeting inside this current fiscal year, you're only giving them another month to come up with more money,
I mean, I
basically.
think, they know that their revenue estimates are conservative. They know that there's some things in play, and I think that would be another thing that they would take into consideration when thinking about what their revised assessment letter, if there's a revised assessment letter, would look like. I think what you're describing is very complicated and very confusing, and I think that, that it's, I'm not sure everyone understands all of the moving parts of the timing and, the requirements of two-town meeting and all of that. It might be more complicated than we need to get, John.
Well, I think it's more complicated if you go to a two-town meeting.
No, you're suggesting delaying either our town meeting, Wilbraham's town meeting, until they get a more reasonable number. Again,
Saying only not voting that part.
so we have no budget.
Right.
Until,
Yeah. The 45-day window is already passed. Today's April 3rd. Our town meeting is May 15th. So if they have to give our assessment letter within 45 days, the time frame is already gone. So I think that we need to vote the assessment that was given to us. And I don't know if it's permissible to adjust it possibly at a fall town meeting, if in fact they get more money from the state legislator than they originally had anticipated. I think that trying to postpone any vote on the budget in its entirety would be a mistake.
What I'm trying to avoid, and I'm sorry if I was confusing about it, was trying to avoid a floor fight between our budget and Wilbraham's budget. That doesn't benefit anybody. And I think that's what Doug was kind of saying. We don't want to get into that staring across the table. I'm giving him this much. I'm giving him this much. What can we do to avoid that? Kathy, you're 100% right. I don't think they can change the assessment letter right now, because like you say, we're inside the window when we're voting, right? Even if they come up with a change on Thursday, we're stuck with the one they gave us, right?
Well, there's an opinion out there that they can reduce their assessment. They can vote to reduce the assessment inside that 45-day window. They can't increase it.
Huh.
Yeah.
Everybody's got opinions.
So we could always make a motion, or they could always make a motion on the floor of the annual town meeting, to change the budget number to reduce it, but not increase it. If they get word from, or, definitive information from the state, the legislature votes, and the governor signs it. If they get additional funding, that we're all hoping they get.
Right, or if like you say, if the negotiations with Wilbraham lead to a reduction in the Hampden number, right,
They
yeah,
can make a motion on the floor of the
Sure.
annual town meeting.
to keep them in,
reduce that.
yep, equity,
And keep in mind that our town meeting is 1 week before Wilbraham.
right?
So we have to vote a number that is, it's either the assessed number or a consensus number,
Mm-hmm. Right,
because we have to vote a number before Wilbraham may even know what they're willing to pay.
mm-hmm. Okay, I'm sorry, Dick?
Yeah, John, I think your idea of leaving the meeting open and not addressing that line item rather cover. But one unintended consequence is nothing is final on the budget. On anything voted at town
Right.
meeting, as long as the meeting's open. So Mark would order his truck, we wouldn't have, nothing, everything would be up for consideration. When we came back, but we couldn't execute anything on the voted at town meeting.
Yeah, I think we ran into that, was it 3 years ago? We had the town meeting in June, remember, Don, because of COVID? Yeah, yeah. And that kind of held us a bit for the July start. Well, thank you for that opinion. So we'll see what Thursday brings. So, bottom line, are we leaving the article on?
Well, I mean, I think
I
it
think
makes
we
sense to
should.
leave it there for
Mhm.
now until we
Okay.
have a little more information.
All right. And we're going to modify it to say Minichog debt, Minichog capital, right? 17,
That's just gonna be informational at this point. We're not ready.
or we're using it for an opportunity to, there may be something, because I think there may be something in the fall. And we don't like to do big things like that in the fall.
Only reason we were considering fall is because there's a time frame between full applications and then the window when those applications are good and they expire. So it might not be prudent to do a full year later.
Right.
Yeah, but it makes sense to put it on the table, make the town aware that it's there.
Exactly.
This is all part of that, what was it called, the municipal power plant?
The MLP.
Yeah.
LP.
I thought I was going to say transparency. Wasn't sure, yeah.
But yes, transparency too.
Yeah. Mhm.
The meeting's Wednesday, Bob.
Mhm. Yeah. Fiber must have been down. All right, same thing with Article 18. There's not going to be anything presented except for an update from Becky.
So no action, you're taking no action on that, and no action on Article 17 as well, right?
If Becky will have her, her pie chart.
Okay, we'll probably be talking about that tomorrow. Except for department, and I send it to Mary, I think they do that with that. Relative to the left out this time.
I think everyone's in there. It's gonna be very crowded in that apartment.
If there's a relative you don't see on the list at the beginning, let us know. I think they had some, we talked about, or I brought it up a decade and a half ago on the planning board. Doesn't need to be up on bylaw.
Has this generated some attention? Are you getting a response to this article, this issue?
Well, the key thing is gonna be making sure it's out there so people understand this is not rental. This is so you have a little place, your mother can live with you, father can live with you, a relative. Your daughter
Yeah,
moves back
exactly.
home with the 2 kids. I'm sure you're happy about that, but they have their own little part of the house. where they live.
Does this define mother and define father?
You know, I think that what they said for mother. It was pretty good. The easement thing with National Grid is again, Grid has to put poles to service the solar field. We need to give them permission to put the poles in. Obviously, the poles are not going to the cap. It'll be a cap. Funding for the 150 out. Whatever we, appropriate town meeting done, has agreed to match out of his pocket.
Yeah.
So what are you looking for, like
So,
$1?
so is this a no act, is this a no action?
Is there no action?
I mean, if Sophie were here again.
Don't
So
tell her,
this is-
she'll
we're-
do
We're
it.
5 years ahead
But who's
schedule with this?
gonna be doing this, I guess is my question. Like, who's gonna be, if we appropriate money for it, who's in charge of planning it? You guys?
Well, pretty much if you go back to 1978.
Centennial Ball?
Basically,
Yeah.
they had the cover the court. Huge event, school, fireworks, the whole thing, but they established the committee 2 years ahead to start planning it. We're just gonna put some seed money there. In a year or so, we'll start with volunteers.
Okay, so how much are you looking for?
I think we talked about 10.
You can always have it at Great Horse. Starting gate at Great Horse,
You put the word in.
not on this committee, sorry.
This time.
We haven't,
What would you like to hear? The resource, I think we have a number in the 11s. Just go with the.
We don't know yet.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about it.
we haven't had any requests yet this year. We still have the full 25. Yeah. You guys are not on the list of do not pay. No, just kidding. It's still early though for some of that.
Well, honestly, I don't know how we could. Again, same thing, we don't know how we have a line item. Put that in request to this. Unless we have.
We don't have one. I asked Cliff, we don't have one.
Right, we could keep funding, we could ask for funding out of reserve fund.
Where's it
I don't know
going?
where we put it. Unless we get-
Well, the only thing, could you put a Board of Health expense, yeah. Right.
Now that ARPA's not there.
No, right.
We're giving it to ARPA, we do have a good solid plan for using.
Yeah.
It's not a one-time.
Reducing the tax rate, we'd love to see your number.
We'd love to see the
0.
number.
Where, so like, give me a ballpark. Where are we? We're 20% above last year? or-
Oh, with those kinds of expectations, we
Seems
have
like-
great news for you.
Seems like a lot of money here, you know?
It's about, with all the capital items and the current assessment figure, it's a little over $800,000 increase.
With the
On
capital
the,
numbers?
on the operation.
On the operational, but not
Not
with
with
the
warrant
truck
articles,
and
we
all
didn't
this.
know any
yeah.
of those numbers until.
Which is a little under 5%.
Regular town budget is that about?
Yeah, so, what did they, percent?
It's just, yeah, it's 4.6, 4.7. But that includes the capital item, the full school requests. And we believe we've captured all the other numbers that have been kicked around.
So we'll have a draft for next week when everybody comes together. You guys will have the warrant.
Get those numbers to you tomorrow. Try and get the fire numbers to you and make sure that both Ed and Mark are at the meeting to explain.
Yeah, it would be helpful for anybody that's, sponsoring an article to
Mhm.
be at the hearing. Last year, we had a few people not come, which,
Mm.
just leaves us in a little bit of a hole, because we do have to get to print that Friday for the green sheets
Mhm.
on 14th.
April
There was-
14th.
Reports.
One other item, we did have last week, Cliff and Rita met with us to discuss a potential change in the line for senior center. Has that come to you? Does that come to you through Becky?
No.
No? We're talking about increasing, what, 5 hours a week over there.
Oh, yeah.
That's not gonna happen.
Okay.
No, I understand. Okay.
You're going with 5. They gave
They-
Martha Rex,
They
they
presented
did,
us
they
with
went with
5.
5. So because we met with them right before we came upstairs.
Yeah, we literally just had our meeting with them. We haven't even discussed it ourselves yet.
Okay, thank you.
See ya.
Always a good time. Let's see, advisory, dog complaint, Don.
Oh, I just saw it. Some dog bit another dog and, right?
Let's reach out to Shelley and see if there's.
Yeah, see if we can, if she
see if we
wants to have a
can-
hearing, I don't
Right,
know.
I think I'd seen her a couple weeks ago, and she was like, it's not a big thing,
Yeah,
so,
but you said the same
think-
thing happened in the fall too, so.
yeah. Does Shelley want to have a hearing on the,
She didn't tell me that.
okay,
She wanted.
that's okay, let's reach,
Okay,
so I want to hear about.
the
I
other
sent you
ones
the
too.
message about Traveling YouTube channel.
There's a GoPro on them now?
Seriously, so
You got a live stream of the
they
dog?
fixed the fence, they dug up underneath the fence. And
Clever, those puppies.
it's like the OJ chase on the freeway, live, so I'd like to hear from Shelley about that, because we've given plenty of time. I don't want to say a lot of breaks.
Yeah.
We've been more than fair on this, and we got to be consistent, so. Selectmen report, not much to report. Like I say, Don and I were both at the planning hearing. I think we heard some good inputs from the board.
Yep.
They had a good vibrant discussion among themselves, a good respectful discussion. So, Senior Center Building Committee meets again next week.
The planning committee for the utilization of school buildings met. We met with town, with administrators, principals, and some teachers, and there was a good discussion there about how things can be changed around somewhat. So next step, I think, is parents and teachers, another group of teachers and parents.
They whittled down the choices, or is it still that like 12?
Yeah, we're down to, there's about 10 right now. and Even some of those now, they don't look like they're feasible, you know?
Some of these choices do require change in the regional agreement, right?
Yes, they
So
do.
that's a bit of a,
That's a bit of a thing, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That will require what, town vote from both towns?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
seen that before.
So, but they're at a position where you got declining enrollment, you got some schools that are way overcrowded, some schools that aren't. They got some schools that are just one grade level, which aren't good for transition for the kids. So they're really trying to do something and save some money at the same time.
And so it's about, a lot about resource
Yeah,
allocation, et
yeah,
cetera.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think, if I remember correctly, our superintendent went through that same situation when he was in Hampton. He had problems with the
Yeah,
regional schools.
yeah, yeah.
Not regional, because they were all,
They were neighborhood schools and stuff, yeah.
got some experience there. Water's clean, we're meeting next week, and hopefully we'll get a final tally of what actually is going on. Yeah, we're meeting with Ty and Bond next week. They're coming into our water commission meeting and kind of hear what we're looking for. Our water operator will be there to recommend his recommendations and see where we can progress from there.
May we? Was that just about the retirement age, or was that the garbage?
Yeah, I heard there's a lot of like civil unrest over there in France that we're not hearing about.
Mhm.
Well, I remember those years.
Did you have a,
Pressure on them.
yeah, really, do you have a chance, just, I know, like I say, still up in the air what's happening with the state budget, but just keep the fire on them, like, when are we gonna get that grant funding for the windows, and you said it would pay for other things, and also the sidewalks, pretty soon. An order out, because nobody will be taking. Mhm. Yeah. Well, we hit them up all, wasn't that thing all the time? Where's the check for the trees?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you just gotta keep asking.
it was a year, all that,
We got it though.
finally. I think if you ask Dick though, when they said they did, it actually didn't come in for a little while after that. So, any other business to come before the board? Mhm. Mhm. Great. Mhm.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion?
Aye.
All right, so we're closing the meet and warrant next week.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you all.